Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Advanced Teaching Roles webinar sharing session. We have a great agenda lined up for you today. My name is Tom Tomberlin. I am the Director of Educator Recruitment and Support at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Our office is responsible for conducting the RFPs that lead to program approval in this area. And we also have a support and oversight role for the advanced teaching roles from the State Board of Education. We are very pleased to have you all here today, and I'm looking forward to hearing about all the great things that are happening out in the field. And I want to kick this meeting off with a brief overview of the agenda. I'm going to be setting the stage and talking about the changes to the advanced teaching roles and compensation, the teacher compensation advanced teaching roles program. And then we'll have Mariah Morris. I think she's leading some breakout sessions. And then our esteemed colleague, Johanna Anderson, will be talking about some deep dives that her organization has done into some of these roles. And then the inimitable Seth Brown and Cindy Bennett will be talking to us about preparing teachers for these positions, and then some closing remarks and next step from Brenda Berg at Best NC. So we hope you all can stay tuned for all this. I myself will probably have to leave somewhere in the middle of this, but please know that we are here to support you in any way as you consider or you continue working on your advanced teaching roles. And let me just jump into my presentation about the changes that have occurred to the program. Let's go. So, Session Law 2020-78 introduced some changes to the pilot programs we saw, and the biggest shift here is that it's no longer considered a pilot, but an established program by the North Carolina General Assembly. There are some definitions here. They refer to classroom teacher a lot in these changes, and they provide a definition which should help us avoid any confusion as to eligibility for these roles. So a classroom teacher is defined as one who spends at least 70% of the instructional day in the classroom providing instruction. It specifically excludes instructional support personnel from this definition. So that's really important. I'm sure as we move through these changes that there are going to be questions about who qualifies for this. For these roles and this expanded opportunities, and we've got those definitions in this current session law. Next slide. So the purposes of the program: to allow highly effective teachers to teach an increased number of students, to provide salary supplements to teachers in advanced roles, create innovative compensation models to focus on teacher professional growth that leads to measurable improvements in student outcomes, and establish organizational changes related to compensation in order to sustain evidence-based teaching practices that may be replicated throughout the state. This last point in particular is important, and this is where the state needs to start taking a more established role in this process. We need to get those great practices out of these programs and advertise broadly across the state and help that learning spread to other districts and see what those impacts could be. I do want to point out number 3, that the teacher professional growth that lead to measurable improvements in student outcomes. If you heard the presentation from the Human Capital Roundtable at the State Board of Education meeting this last month, this is a very this is a point of integration between the work that the roundtable is trying to do as far as teacher licensure overall and the connection to this advanced teaching roles program. So we want to look to how can the licensure system support this idea of measurable teacher growth and improvement that is connected to measurable student outcomes. And so you're going to see some synergy between things that are happening in the licensure system. If you haven't looked at that, look at that presentation, especially on the advanced credential roles, which we are hoping align very nicely with the advanced teaching role program. Next slide. So the RFP process, so the state will conduct an annual RFP process on September 15th. The RFP must include a plan description of the advanced teaching roles, those job responsibilities, the communication plan of the district, how a teacher would voluntarily relinquish an advanced teaching role should that need arise. And there's language about doing so without a consideration of demotion or salary structure that the program will entail, the schools affected by this program, the sustainability of the program, and any external partners that the district will be working with to make the program happen. Next slide. So funding. Currently, there's $1.5 million annually appropriated for the advanced teaching roles. The awards are granted for 3 years. There is a tiered award system with a certain number, a maximum number going to small districts defined as less than 4,000, mid-sized districts for 4,001 to 20,000, and then large districts 20,001 students and above. Under this new RFP process, a school system could be designated as a program without funding. And so we could award the status of you are an advanced teaching roles district, but do so without funding. And that has implications. Currently, the class size flexibility for K-3 can only occur with state funding. If you'll recall, the last, we did a follow-up RFP because we had one of our school systems that was originally funded drop out because they couldn't complete the program with the amount of funding they received. And so we reallocated some funding in this last round. 3 schools were selected. One of them was funded almost at their full asking their budget, but 2 others received nominal awards of about $5,000. They really weren't seeking much state funding to begin with, and so the board decided to go ahead and fund them. That does trigger class size flexibility for these folks, so we need to think about moving forward. Even if the funding is nominal, can we still award that funding so the districts can exercise that class size flexibility, which is crucial to many of our advanced teaching programs across the state. There is also a requirement for program evaluation by the State Board of Education. This you should consider this to be in addition to any external evaluations you might be doing as a district to understand how your programs are affecting student outcomes, but there is a requirement in the legislation that the State Board of Education do program evaluations of these districts. So just to next slide, please. Just to give you kind of a brief overview of how this is going to work, because of the way the funding cycles are set up with a 3-year award time. So in year 1, that will be, I've just arbitrarily put this in this way. So year 1, let's say we've got an award of $500,000 because we've got 2 funding cohorts set up. One has $500,000 and the other one has $1 million. So in year 1, we'd be leveraging the $500,000 because the districts that were awarded money from that pot would be ending their 3-year cycle. And so we could award grants for 3 years out of that, and you could possibly receive a designation without funding. Year 2 of that cycle, the cohort of districts that was under the $1 million pot, we would hold another RFP with those funds available. We would make grant awards for 3 years out of that. It would be possible again for a district to be designated without funding under that cycle. And then in year 3, we would have no funding because the 2 cohorts are in their second and first year respectively. So we would have no funding available, but we would still hold the RFP for any district that wanted to seek designation status. But that would come without funding. So it puts us in an interesting situation. We will go ahead and hold the RFP in that year. But as you can see, it's not very advantageous for a district to apply to engage in the RFP process in that year unless they built a system for which they would not ask any state funding. The status does allow budget flexibility for districts, and they can use their local budgets in any way that's not previously, for which they're not previously prevented from doing so. So you have budget flexibility, except where the law says you don't have budget flexibility. We're trying to get some understanding of what that actually means. We need to understand that from the state level so we can help advise districts of what funding flexibilities would exist under this program that do not currently exist for you without the program designation. I know Tom Feller from Pitt County has been kind of querying about what are these budget flexibilities, and I have to say I've shaken every tree I know, and I can't come up with what it is that's offering in the legislation. But we will continue to work on it, and we will seek legislative guidance about that. What was the intent behind this? Is there something in particular that you were identifying as offering budget flexibility? Now, that particular flexibility would come with the designation, even without funding, the way I'm reading the law. And so, but the K-3, I do want to let you know that it is on our legislative liaisons priority list to investigate this and see if we can get them to change their position on this. The designation would yield that flexibility because in K-3 especially, there's really no way for the teacher to be responsible for a greater number of students without that flexibility. So that's just can you clarify if year 1 on the table is 2021 or is it 2022? So if you'll go back to that slide real quick, Zach, if you don't mind. So the funding year, and again, I set this up arbitrarily just to give you a sense of what it would look like. We recently awarded the $1 million pot. So that was for the 2021 school year. The $500,000 pot was awarded in the 18-19 school year, I want to say. I think that's right. So year 1, 2018-19, 19-20, 2021, no, 18-19, 19-20, 2021. I think I have this. I'll have to go back and look at the funding cycles on this. It's in my head that this next RFP we do would be a year 3. There would be no funding because I think some of our districts are, I think our first cohort with the $500,000 will not end until the 2021, at the end of the 2021 school year. And then the most recent would have it for 2021, 2022, 2023. And so in sometime in September of 2022, we would hold the RFP for funding for the following school year. we'll get that worked out. Robert Sachs, who's working with us, has that matrix all set up for us, and I'm pretty certain that in this coming September, we will be holding an RFP without funding, if memory serves. And then I can get you information on the next funding cycle and how much state dollars will be awarded for that. And then I saw a question in the chat. Oh, yeah, looks like somebody got it there for you. Session Law 2020-78. Tom, are you able to speak about the funding for districts in the last RFP cohort that had the funding switch from a 3-year to 1 year? So so this was an interesting situation. We held an RFP back in the early part, January of last year. And as a result of that RFP, the 2020 Session Law 2020-78 had not come out at that time. And so we held it as a pilot under the pilot provisions. And then subsequent to us releasing that RFP and creating the awards, Session Law 2020 came out. And so what we had to say at that point was, if you're a pilot program in this, we only can guarantee 1 year of funding because we don't know how the law, we knew that the law was on the books and we didn't know how it was going to affect the pilot status. As a result, we didn't see anything in the law that required us to change anything for those pilot programs. So all that's really happening is now those pilot programs are designated as programs. And they will continue on that 3-year funding. They don't have to reapply. We will go ahead and make that switch, and they will follow along as cohort on their 3 years as originally intended. That was just giving us some wiggle room in case something in the RFP in the new law changed the conditions from the pilot program, and none of that occurred. So. But I appreciate you bringing that up because we probably need to follow up with those pilot districts to let them know they are programs and they do have the full 3 years of funding. I hope that helps. A formal communication, yes. So we'll get communication out to those districts and make sure they're aware that they have switched from a pilot program to a full-fledged program. Any other questions out there? Well, I've already encroached grossly on Mariah's time, so without further ado, I will turn it over to Mariah Morris.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it, and it is great to see you all this morning. I hope you're doing well. I am going to work with you guys on some breakout sessions. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like over the last 11 months or so, we have been breakout roomed to death. So we're going to shake things up a little bit today. I might not get invited back to have this role again, but we're going to have some fun with this. So this is what we're going to think about today. We're going to think about how do advanced teaching roles help districts with recruitment and retention? How can we use advanced teaching roles as a recruitment tool? And then how can we use it to help retain some of our best teachers? Well, if you've ever heard me speak in any venue, you will know that I am a very firm believer in designing policy and choices with our users in mind, that we have to really radically bring in the voices of our teachers and our students when we are trying to design new systems and new ideas. So today we're going to embark on a little journey together for the next 45 minutes or so, where we're going to be looking at a new way of thinking through advanced teaching roles using empathy maps. Empathy maps is a visualization tool that leaders use during design work, any type of design thinking, and it's used really across sector in all different industry. An empathy map allows a team to gain a deeper insight and understanding about how either their product, or in this case, a new idea or protocol, is going to affect the group of users that they're going to roll this out to. An empathy map is a collaborative tool, so you're going to be completing an empathy map in a group in a minute. It's very simple and it's a very easy to digest visual. There's no use in overthinking this. Have fun with it. Don't worry about doing it right or wrong. This is really a tool to go deeper into how advanced teaching roles might impact different groups. And it's a very effective process to understand different behaviors and attitudes. This picture is actually an empathy map that a school improvement team created earlier this summer at an elementary school here in Moore County Schools where I work. And as you can see, they're very simple, very easy, and it's a great way for a team to dig deeper. So in a few minutes, you are going to be put into a breakout room. And you will be assigned a different user to think about. Group 1 will be a potential hire, and all of the Jamboard links will be labeled. But if you're in Group 1, you're going to create a user that is a new hire that you are recruiting to your district. So think of the best and the brightest type of teacher that you want to attract. Group 2 is going to be thinking about what it would be like to be at your school as a current teacher when you are hearing about advanced teaching roles. So this is going to be from the perspective of your current teacher in a school building in your district. Group 3 is a district teacher that is at another school. So we all know the best administrators are like pirates. They like to steal the best and brightest teachers from the other schools. Possibly it might be a recruitment tool in that capacity. Or there's a lot of different ways to think about it, but that's a district teacher at another school that does not have advanced teaching roles. Group 4 is a school-based administrator who's implementing advanced teaching roles. And then Group 5 is a parent or a family member who has a child at the school. And then they are going to be hearing about advanced teaching roles. Maybe they've been waiting their turn to get Miss Smith for years and years. And lo and behold, they hear Miss Smith now isn't going to be teaching as many students. And so you have to think through what that's going to be like for the family and the community members. So each of the breakout rooms is going to be assigned one of those roles. In the middle of the empathy map, if you can go to the next slide, there's going to be a circle, and that's the user. And you have to create an actual persona. So don't put potential hire in the middle. I need you guys as a group to name this potential hire. Get into who this potential hire is. Is it a girl? Is it a boy? Is it from your district? Is it from outside of the district? Is it someone who's brand new out of college? Is it a veteran teacher that you're recruiting from another district? Really take some time to develop who this person is. If we were together, yes, I would make you draw this person and even, give them freckles if they have freckles. But because we are together virtually, you probably can't do that. So you will take a sticky note from the Jamboard and write down as many details about who this person is. Then the Jamboard is going to be broken up into different quadrants. In the first quadrant, you're going to write what this person thinks. You're going to grab different sticky notes and you're going to write down, what does a new hire think when he or she hears that this school has advanced teaching roles? What are the different thoughts that go through their brain? In the next quadrant, you're going to write down what they say. What are some things that come out of their mouth? That might be in an interview. It might be formally with, someone that they are consulting with about the position. It might be when they go home and they're telling their friends or their spouse about this new job. But what do they say? Below that, what actions do they actually do? So what are the things that they do after hearing about advanced teaching roles as a new hire? And then what does it feel like to them? What are their inner feelings? And these are very internal facing, this one, what the feelings. What do they think? I'm sorry, not what do they think? What do they feel? What emotions come up when they hear that this school is onboarding advanced teaching roles? And then down at the bottom is what goals do they have during this process of learning about advanced teaching roles. And you're going to spend time pulling sticky notes and writing down different items that fit in the quadrant. I want you to lean in when there are conflicting ideas and thoughts in the boxes. So something they might think might be very different from what they say. You don't have to create this beautiful, coherent image of this person, because part of this activity is leaning into the complexities of human emotion when they're experiencing change. And so they might very well say, oh, this is great, I'm really excited to try this, to the principal, but they might very well be thinking, oh no, like, what is this person telling me? I'm not fit for this position. So go ahead and lean into those conflicting thoughts and feelings. This is collaborative, but please do pick one person to briefly share out. When we come back together, we're going to go through the different user personas. And the goal of this is, at the end, when we think about all of these different people being impacted by advanced teaching roles, how can we roll this program out, these advanced teaching roles out, in a way that helps recruitment and retention by really understanding the complexities of systemic change. I hope y'all have fun with this. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answers. You'll be in your breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. So do spend some time really developing that user. And then also go ahead and click the ask for help button at the bottom when you're in your breakout room if you need help, and I will be zoomed into your room. But other than that, you don't have a facilitator from Best NC. This is really an organic group experience. So let me check the chat. The Jamboard link is in the chat. If you guys could please pull this up on your computer before you get sent to your breakout rooms, that will help a lot. And then, are there any questions before we get started? All righty. Well, the powers that be, if you guys want to work your magic, we will come back together in 15 minutes. All right, it looks like everybody is coming back to us. And one of the things I love about coming back from a breakout room is everyone's camera is on. So it's great to see y'all's faces this time around. But we are going to spend our last 15 minutes together having each group quickly share out the main takeaways from their empathy maps. You don't have to go through everything, but share with us some of the main points and important different ideas that were bouncing around your group from the perspective of your user. And again, as you listen to everybody's presentation, think about the implications this has on our teacher recruitment piece, and how this profile that you're listening to might somehow be part of building a solid recruitment tool. So group one, I'm going to hand it over to your spokesperson.
Is that you, Sean, or is that me? I was trying to voluntold you right there.
Yeah, I'll be happy to take it.
All right.
So we went through a new hire and just going through the map. So our new hire is Sonia Diaz, and she's saying things that thank goodness I'm going to have somebody to help me. But also at the same point, I hope this person that's helping me isn't necessarily giving me more work to do. But they're going to wonder at that same time, and in that same line of thought, if she really needs a coach, and then what is that coach going to be doing? Are they going to be helping me with my lesson plans? Are they going to be doing lesson plans? The co-teaching aspect of it. So what's it really gonna look like, sound like, feel like? But then there's always going to be that thought of I'm really having trouble with a specific block or group of kids, and then knowing that support is there to help them, and also gives them something else to aspire to outside of the traditional administration, because that's been typically the only career path for teachers, is go into administration, then potentially central office. This gives them a way to keep that face time with teachers and stay connected to their students. In terms of doing, we felt like most people that experienced the support of a either an MCL or MCT would ask more questions and also feel ask about the support so they don't burn out. Then hoping that this person would feel more successful, more confident because they have the support, and really feel like that the school and the district was invested in them and their success due to those extra supports. I think I about covered it. Does anybody from group one want to add anything that I may have missed? Or does anybody have any questions about anything that we have?
Thank you, Sean. You did a great job of synthesizing all this in group one. I love how you guys kind of hit that nuance of there is some excitement and, okay, my district's investing in their teachers, but day to day, what is that going to feel like as a new teacher to the district? So I think for us as education leaders, it's taking that information and making sure we're very clear in the protocols and operationalizing this and how we present that to new hires is one takeaway that I can glean from that. Any other comments? All right, well, thank you, group one. Group two, take it away.
Okay, Mariah, do you mind switching to our slide, or you want me to pull it up?
Zach, can you switch over, please? Thank you.
So for group two, we had the current teacher. And so one of the first things that we thought about with the current teacher is that they're probably going to be someone who is already a leader in their school, maybe on the SIT team, department chair, doing something where they have already taken on that leadership role. They're also going to be an expert in the field of education. They're going to be good at working with students, and they're going to be good at collaborating with other people. So what they would think would be, I want to stay in the classroom. I don't necessarily want to go into administration. I love being a classroom teacher, but they would want to be someone who would want to share their expertise with other teachers and to help increase student achievement through their expertise. And then also we wanted to highlight that there are some teachers who might be upset that if they have a master's degree, that they're not someone who's being selected for the advanced teaching roles, or that their master's degree isn't something where they're being identified as someone who would be receiving additional pay for moving into a leadership position as a teacher leader. So one of the things that Johanna said that I thought was awesome was she said, you know, this is kind of a program where you're like a master's degree would kind of keep you in your same four walls in your classroom, whereas the advanced teaching roles would be a program where you would move outside of those four walls and take the skills that you have learned in that master's degree and then apply them to be a teacher who is helping other teachers and impacting the way that students are learning and helping students learn better. And so I thought that was a really good way to kind of describe it. For your goals, it would be someone that wants to help kids, wants to help other teachers, and wants to be a teacher leader, but wants to do that staying in their role as a classroom teacher. Did anyone else from group two have anything they wanted to add?
Sounds perfect.
Okay. Awesome, Maureen. Miss Frizzle for the win there. So does anybody have any feedback for group two or anything they want to add? I think one of the nuances y'all hit on is what happens with the teachers who might feel a little bit jealous or upset that they're not selected. And again, that kind of goes back to clear protocols of this is how we select the teachers, so they don't think that favoritism plays into it. There's very clear protocols so that if you want this position, you have an entry point to it by developing your craft and developing yourself to be considered. So great job, group two. Group three, y'all are up.
This is I was the note taker for this, but I have to jump on another meeting in like 2 minutes. So could one of my colleagues?
I'll be happy to, Tom. This is Amy. I'll be happy to. So we didn't quite get as far on our chart, but we had some great discussion. So we said that this, I'm trying to see where your notes were on the actual teacher, but we said he was a math teacher in his 10th year, African-American. And one of the things that he was saying was that I enjoy my role as a teacher, but feel that I must grow professionally in order to keep his spirit engaged, and that his current career is not financially sustainable as his personal situation develops. The other thing we said that he might say publicly is perhaps I need to enroll in a program to seek an MSA. What he's thinking may be that his situation is unique and there aren't many professionals who are conflicted about career advancement and commitment to student learning. It's not the right type to be offered opportunities. And we talked about the social or micro political connections. And is his success with students enough to be considered for advancement? We started getting into the does and the feels. I'm trying to look, the does, we said that he may need to seek some critical feedback from his colleagues on what he might lack that others possess, but that was about as far as we got on that.
Yeah, those are great, very in-depth nuances that you guys talked about. Really great job kind of touching on the whole persona there. Does anybody have any feedback for group 3? I think something that I noted was him wanting to grow professionally, but thinking he might not be the right type. And I think there's a lot in that statement. So how does advanced teaching roles help with retention or recruitment in terms of helping teachers grow themselves and see their job not as static, but as a profession where they can constantly evolve and work on themselves. So y'all really captured that nicely. Thank you. Let's go to group 4. Group 4, take it away.
I did our sticky notes on this one, so I'll go ahead and review. So we were thinking of this, we had the administrator assignment. We were thinking of a female elementary school principal in a rural setting, 3 years in her role. So she's established in her role. She's ready to make some changes. She's got some things that she's realized are not changing despite her efforts. She's particularly concerned about high teacher turnover. Some goals would be to stabilize that workforce, but also to improve student achievement. So that's what she has in mind. She's saying that she can't get traction on student results because of the constant turnover on her team, and she doesn't have time to coach all of these new teachers that she keeps getting each year, that she's stretched too thin. She's wondering if there's some way she could set up a structure to delegate teacher leaders to get started on the work that she knows needs to happen instructionally in her school, but is not able to make happen because of her time constraints. She's been having weekly staff meetings and trying to build buy-in and commitment of her team, but feeling like that gets thwarted by the constant turnover and the lack of attention she can give instructionally to her teachers. She's been trying to work with some local universities to attract teachers that might be willing to stay in her rural community, but she ultimately doesn't feel empowered to make the changes she needs to improve the cycle. And that's where we ran out of time.
That's awesome. In a district that has some very rural schools who definitely struggle with recruitment, this really speaks to me as a district leader. Can anybody else add any feedback to this group that they might think is important? Maybe an administrator on the call or on part of our group today? Well, since no one's speaking up, I'll share again. I think that taking what Stephanie shared in context of what the other group shared about the teachers, is really where the power would come in with these empathy maps. So understanding that these goals of the principal align really well to advanced teaching roles, and there's going to be some excitement with some of the staff, understanding there's also going to be that nuance of how do we bridge the gap of the teachers who aren't selected or who might not feel like they're the right type. And so therein lies the opportunity to really make some powerful choices as the administrator. All right, we have, I believe, one more group or maybe two more. So group 5, go ahead.
Our group would like to introduce you to Engaged Eunice. Engaged Eunice is a proud mom of 3 kids at the school, and Engaged Eunice is feeling a little bit skeptical. She really wants to trust that the school has her child's best interests in mind, but she also wants to make sure that this ATR thing is helping or at least not hurting her own kids. She does have some deep concerns about some potential negative impact. And she's really wondering if there's anything wrong with her own child's teacher. Why do they have to have this extra helper in the classroom? And then she's also wondering why the school would pull the best teachers out of the classrooms for the kids to assign them to these other roles. Now, in public, when she speaks to others, she's not sure this is a good idea, but she's going to give it a chance and she's going to see how it goes. She does speak pretty loudly about increasing class sizes because the school has talked for years about how important small class sizes are, and they seem to be hedging a little bit on that in order to implement this. And she's really being very intentional. She wants to have a meeting with the administrator to really learn more, but also express her concerns about this new advanced teaching roles process. So that's Eunice. That's who we talked about in my group today.
Dr. Socks and helper, that is a very cute helper you have there. We appreciate that very in-depth picture of what it might look like for a parent. And gosh, I can imagine Engaged Eunice right now. I think we've all had these Engaged Eunices come across our educational careers at some point. And so in this empathy map, we're going to see how important communication is to our parents about exactly what ATR looks like in the school, why we're doing it, our mission, and how it aligns to the mission. And maybe some extra care and attention toward our parents and our engaged community, so that negative, sorry, Johanna, you distracted me. Dr. Socks, please tell us your cat's name is Socks. Socks. That's hilarious.
Sorry, y'all. This is Oreo. His nickname is Mr. Pudge, and he usually doesn't get in the camera frame, but today he decided he needed to visit, so sorry about that.
Oh, please, he's a cutie. Don't be sorry. And yes, that is also a good name. But anyways, paying some extra attention to our parents so that they don't spark any negativity that then trickles down to teachers, etc. Great job, group 5. And I believe that was our last group, if I'm not mistaken.
And I had something we talked about with parents.
Sure.
Tom, I asked a question about parents, and Tom brought up something really specific that his district has been really intentional about. And that's this idea that a parent, when you have an advanced teaching role that is supporting another teacher, the interpretation could be that the teacher being supported is having a problem. And if you have a parent that spins that the wrong way, if Engaged Eunice decides that this teacher is broken and every teacher that an advanced teaching roles teacher is helping is broken, they actually could turn the tides so that any parent that has a student in a teacher being supported by an advanced teaching roles teacher, they begin to complain and actually knock the legs out from under the program. So Tom talked about how important messaging was around that, so you can strike a balance and not create that concern on the part of parents that something about this participating teacher is broken. So I think that's a thin line to navigate, and I imagine it's probably quite challenging.
Dr. Socks, that's an excellent point. And part of that messaging, why it's so important, is let's take the empathy map of the veteran teacher from a couple slides ago, Ms. Frizzle. And let's say for a minute, Ms. Frizzle wasn't selected as an advanced teacher, okay? If we're not strategic with our leadership on rolling out advanced teacher roles, imagine Engaged Eunice collaborating with Ms. Frizzle to then breed negativity. And so that's part of why that strategic messaging is so important to this process.
You could very easily get a bitter shadow side of advanced teaching roles if you're not careful.
That's right. And I think by going deep into these profiles, this is just a starter, but I would imagine you could take this as a launching pad and really think through as a leader how you can develop this system and the messaging to mitigate some of that shadow. So awesome job. If there are no other comments, I am going to turn it back over to Best NC, and thank you guys for going through this process with us this morning.
Mariah, that was fantastic. I love that we're tackling problems with, like, we're just, you know, there's no sort of sweeping things under the rug. This stuff is really complex. And, you know, private industry marketing companies use empathy maps all the time to address, you know, how do you tackle these complex problems. So, you know, Mariah, thank you for that. I think we can all agree that socks, I mean, Oreo has broken the internet today. That's an awesome cat. I'm Brenda Berg, CEO of Best NC. On days like today, I work for Leah Sutton, our VP of Advocacy and Engagement. She's the lead on this work, and as you heard, she is not feeling well today, so I'm taking over for emceeing, but and trying to fill her incredible shoes. But anyway, she's doing fine. I'm excited to transition us briefly to Johanna Anderson from the Belt Foundation is going to share with us her reflections. Belt Foundation and Freddie Institute hosted a deep dive from 3 advanced teaching roles districts. And she'll share some of her reflections. But first, when we, you know, we were just participants observing it, Superintendent Truitt wasn't able to attend. And so she recorded some remarks for the group. And we just thought it was such an incredible sort of breakthrough moment on advanced teaching roles to have a superintendent speak to the value and the need for advanced teaching roles that we wanted to make sure to share this video with you. So I'm going to share the welcoming remarks. I wish I could say it was for this meeting, but it's for that meeting, but we're all in this together. And then I'm going to turn it over to Johanna to give us some briefs on that day. So Zach, if you can press play.
Hello to you all. My name is Catherine Truitt, and I am the Superintendent of the Department of Public Instruction. Thank you for allowing me to join you virtually today. For those of you who I haven't met yet, allow me to introduce myself. My service in education began in the classroom, where I spent 10 years teaching both middle and high school. After spending 3 years serving nationally as a turnaround coach in urban districts, I joined Governor Pat McCrory's team as his senior education advisor. Most recently, I served as chancellor of nonprofit Western Governors University, North Carolina, the only 100% competency-based university in the country. Throughout my career as an educator, I had many opportunities to lead outside the classroom without having to leave the teaching profession altogether. But these opportunities were definitely not the norm for most teachers. This is why I'm so excited about the work of advanced teaching roles. Creating and uplifting sought-after career advancement opportunities is such an important way that we can grow our teacher pipeline while we continue to support and grow newer teachers in our state. By leveraging the talents and skills of great teachers, we are championing professional development opportunities for teachers and ensuring greater student success. This initiative also encourages collaboration, which is key to improving teacher effectiveness. When our educators are given the support they need to advance their careers, our students, our schools, and the teaching profession benefit greatly. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to join you all today. I look forward to our partnership in the weeks and months ahead.
We always say elevate educators for student success, right? Elevate educators for student success, and she really nailed it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Johanna Anderson, who will share some thoughts on the presentation last week. Johanna, take it away.
Thanks, Brenda. And allow me to apologize for my distraction about the cat. I have found this about myself with Zoom, that throughout my K-12 college graduate school career, I have always been the front row kid who eyes to the front. And Zoom and the chat feature has made me the class clown, the inner class clown that I always wanted to be, but was too much of a nerd and rule follower. I just let loose on chat. So apologies for that distraction. Welcome to the dark side. Yes, thank you, Amy. It's really fun. I get it now. Several of you, including Amy and Seth and others, were not only speakers on this webinar, but we're also participants. So I'm not going to totally recap it, but I wanted to give you just a couple of my high-level takeaways and then hear from y'all about, for those who participated, fill in the blanks, what resonated with y'all. And we'll also share at the top that this webinar last week was recorded. I can't multitask, but after this, I'll send out the link to you all. And Friday Institute is writing like a quick recap of the event as well. And part of our intention, we were thrilled with the response. We had great attendance, but it was also to document us talking about this so that if you're newer in your district, or perhaps you have, you have new leadership, you have principals who are trying to figure out what this concept is that you're trying to get across, that you could share this and use this as a way for folks that are a little bit more veteran into implementation to really talk about the nuance of how to implement it well, lessons learned, where they see value, and where they're leaning in moving forward. So first and foremost, just a little background. Several years ago, when the Friday Institute got the contract from the state to do a quantitative analysis of the initial pilot, Tripp Stallings, formerly with the Friday Institute, came to me and said, we're going to crunch the numbers. That's important, but especially for just the first couple years of a pilot, it's, we're not certain they're going to be like hugely informative, right? It's just laying the groundwork and some baseline. What we most need to know at this juncture is how these are working and what they look like, and the lessons learned when you ask more qualitative style questions to the people who are implementing. And so I really want to thank the three districts that agreed to do this deeper level of reflection were Pitt, CMS, and Edgecombe. And there were some nice commonalities across their models, but also differences in, not only the districts themselves, geography, size, capacity, but also some slight differences to the models that they implemented. And so those were really played out in the deep dive sessions. And these three districts have learned a lot from each other around the pros and cons of approaching in the way that they have. A few takeaways that I had, the two primary ones that when we were planning this session, we really wanted to get across and communicate to folks that were coming to this session intrigued, maybe starting the process to implement. But these were just kind of like, God, they've got to know this up front. The first is give yourself time to plan. And this is important both for the kind of central office lead team, but also at the school level. You all can't take, 80% of the time within central office and then spring it on schools and say, okay, over the next 2 months, you're going to implement this and expect for them to have gone through that change process. I thought that the empathy map exercise that we just did was perfect. Steal that, take that and do that both at your central office and engaging with your school leadership teams. Have your principals moderate that session with their school leadership teams to really put themselves in the shoes. This will hugely help in communicating what I find with a lot of these models, people hear kind of what they want to hear and they miss a lot of the core components of it, because it's not just this typical kind of like one trick pony, very kind of simple. There are nuances and complexities to implementing these and benefits as well. And so if you're only hearing half the story, you're not thinking about how others are perceiving it, it's setting yourselves up for a lot of communication breakdown. And so really giving yourself time to plan with empathy and these important communication elements in mind is critical. The other very important primary takeaway from the session was plan with sustainability in mind from the start. From the start. I can't tell you how many times as a funder I get pitched, pilots, and I say, okay, so what's the sustainability plan? They say, we're going to be so successful. We know this is going to be like a game changer for our district, organization, what have you, that it's just going to be built in magically to our ongoing budget. And how many times does that actually happen? Even if it is a game changer and amazing and shows really early results, which frankly, we know this can be a game changer. You don't see results at a high level overnight. And so make sure that the investments that are short-term by design, the state funding, if you're successful in securing private dollars, make sure that you are using those towards line items that that you plan on diminishing over time. And so that the full cost of what you are trying to implement is built with sustainable dollars. Otherwise, you're going to hit that skepticism that we know teachers and administrators have, which is like, sure, this is going to be a cool thing to try out for a couple of years, and then funding's going to dry up, because it always does. And so you really want to think about that on the front end. 2 items for what I'm thinking a lot about this year, and some of which was lifted up in the webinar. The first is everybody really acknowledged that it was hugely valuable in the planning for this crazy year to have this ready set of identified teacher leaders. That you didn't have to kind of go like in the chaos of planning for this year, who can I rely on? Who can be my strong coach? Who can help teachers transition into virtual learning? And so just to be able to answer that question automatically, who are we going to be able to rely on from our teacher workforce to have them identified, and better yet, in roles of leadership and designated responsibility. But what was kind of interesting is nobody said like, we're using them in radically different ways this year, right? So when I said, well, so how are you using these multi-classroom leaders this year? They said, well, they're doing what they're meant to do. They're coaching teachers. They're helping them transition to new ways of teaching. They're helping with planning and using research, and they're pushing in when they need to do specialized small groups. So that it was assuring to hear these roles are continuing to focus on instruction, which is what they're meant to do. But what I'm really curious about, and I charge you all, especially those who are a little bit more mature in your implementation, try to push a little bit more heading into next year on how you're leveraging these roles to meet the very serious constraints that I know all of your districts are grappling with right now related to recovery of learning and anticipated enrollment dips, right? It's an issue, and we need to have our eyes open on that, especially as we just talked about sustainability. So when it comes to anticipating some of the challenges that you all are grappling with now and won't magically go away next school year, think about, particularly if you're experiencing, challenges in getting all your students access to the most amazing qualified teacher in a hard to staff subject area, how can you leverage your new capacity in virtual learning to give every student in your district access to that amazing Math 1 teacher? Like how are we taking what we've learned in terms of extending reach through other mediums to make sure that no kid is sitting through a whole year with a long-term sub when down the street at another school is this rock star amazing teacher? We have some solutions for that now. Let's really think about how we're creatively using that. The last, and I'll leave this, 2 questions that I'm thinking about. And then I want to hear from you guys about your reflections from the session. Hearing more and more around this question of how do we maintain fidelity to implementation while still allowing for innovation and responding to the unique needs of the schools, right? I just looked it up like, hey, let's push on this capacity in this role, and that might change up, you know, how you have confined the current roles. So how do we not lose sight of the primary intention of what these roles are set up to do related to instruction and extending the reach and being sustainable? But also this tension of like, this is spreading like wildfire across our state. That's a good thing. There needs to be some level of codification of the roles and clarity, and as we get to this mature state, but we also don't want to constrain. So I think this is going to be a growing conversation that this group has around kind of what do we hold tight and where do we allow for differentiation across districts and schools. The other question that I wish Tom was on here, I will follow up with him. We've got to still research this, folks. We still really need the quantitative research on how are these models affecting not only teachers, but kids and achievement. And we've got to continue to look at implementation measures. And I think that's what's really valuable at the district level. But when it comes to the state, I want us to continue to think about, you know, what are the metrics that are most important, evergreen, for us to continue to analyze related to how these models are contributing to our intentions of growing the teaching profession, making sure that we're retaining our most effective teachers, keeping them in the classroom, extending their reach to more kids, and getting higher achievement. And so that's a charge to this group, and one that I really want us to solve around together and advocate for continued research and attention on these models. So with that, I will stop. Those are Johanna's musings for today. And I want to, if I can, Brenda, kind of open it up. And so for those who sat through the webinar, what did I miss that like really hit home with you? Or what questions did you have that you wanted to ask the panelists that you didn't get a chance to doing? So let her rip. You can either chat in the chat function or just take yourself off mute. I know Amy and Seth, Michelle from CMS is here. I will also cold call on them if I need to.
And Seth is presenting next, so you can also hold.
Oh, okay. So Seth, you have your time. No, okay.
I was going to say just real quick, one of the things that you said that's not necessarily in the presentation is the whole idea of when you have teacher leaders, part of the way we utilize them is let them be self-directed leaders. So we don't have to micromanage. We don't have to create a new program because they're doing it automatically. And that's the beautiful thing when they're in place, they're doing it automatically. And I think that's, you know, talking to Edgecombe and so the same models are around in Charlotte is that we're able to adapt and become adaptive, not adapted and stick, but we actually can continually learn. And that's one thing that I think is vitally important in implementing these roles.
Yeah, that's great, Seth. What about Michelle and Amy and Kelly? Anything from the kind of CMS perspective around maybe like how you're thinking about that tension between like quality implementation and growth? Because I know we're at what, over 70 schools in CMS now implementing?
We'll be 80 very soon.
Okay, so let's talk about how you all are managing for model fidelity and quality implementation while we're doing this kind of rapid growth.
I think we're showing a lot of flexibility. I mean, Bechet and Kelly have 2 schools that are adding that, you know, the timing of the principalship wasn't in line with our original design session. We're opening a brand new school, so implementing the program in a brand new school is not something we've done before. We've always implemented in existing schools. So just flexibility from our staff in that design year and giving them the support as they're able to receive it.
Another one of the things that we've done this year is, since we've gotten so large, we've divided up the district into zones. And aside from, of course, we're always available whenever anyone has any questions, participants or principals. But as we move into this, we have assigned check-in times every semester where we have to review the plans, review goals, review everything with the principals and anyone who is on the design team, just to make sure that everything is being implemented with fidelity and the program is being maximized in that school and tailored to that school's needs.
I think what Amy was talking about as far as flexibility, we learned the hard way, too much flexibility is not a good thing as well. So it's with the term we coined was defined autonomy. Like, in other words, it's like the DeFores. It's what's tight, what's loose. So we're tight on these things and you can do it any way you want to, as long as you do these things. And that was one of the key things we learned early on of starting out too loose and too, like, basically differentiated for each school, and then saying, all right, let's focus on what's successful and repeat what's successful, and the things that aren't, make sure that those are discarded. So that was a key for us.
Yeah. And so I think what you're hearing here is like continual learning, right? Like, even though you're going to listen to us and you're going to do that really good planning time up front, like, it doesn't stop, right? That reflection, that listening, that having empathy with those who are at the school level implementing. So with that, that time flew. We want to wrap up. Know that I see Kelly put the link to the webinar recording in the chat. There will also be some really good kind of recaps and one-pagers for y'all to use as resources to explain this to those in your districts. So thanks again to Friday Institute for doing the research to begin with, but also the participants in the deep dive analysis and webinar last week. You guys were super helpful, and I'm sure that reach, you are extending your reach by sharing with others. All right, Brenda, back to you.
Thank you so much. That was great. And I was taking active notes. I love that balance of maintaining the fidelity while customizing and innovating. I always think of this as the innovation adoption curve. So it's also not just how it affects those who came in as early adopters, but we do have to have a model that works for people who want plug and play, right? And how do you do plug and play while still really truly empowering those teachers? So I think we're at this incredible, important inflection point, and everything that we've been talking about today with the empathy maps and everything feeds right into that. So speaking of right into that, Johanna, you mentioned we have to be ready. We have to have a ready set of teachers, which is exactly what Seth and Cindy are going to speak about. We have Seth Brown from Pitt County Schools and Cindy Bennett from Vance County Schools, who are going to lead us on a conversation of how do you prepare teachers for, how do you get that pipeline of talent moving in. Just time check, we're at 11:26 and they were supposed to start at 11:15. We got a little bit off, but they're gonna go roll us basically right up until just before noon, and I will give you my sign off at the end, and that's it. So we'll give them as much time as possible. With that, I'm gonna turn this right over to Seth and Cindy to introduce themselves and go from there. Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you, Cindy, for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you. So I think, Zach, we have a PowerPoint to help guide us as we go back and forth. And the way Cindy and I are going to do this is really talk through just a little bit some key points. So that way you see different methods from different counties as well. So my name is Seth Brown. I'm the Director of Educator Support and Leadership Development. Tom Feller is normally the partner that he's off screen right now. So it's the last really 5 years we have been deeply engaged in advanced teaching roles. 2 years before that, we started our pipeline programs as well. So I think right there with Charlotte Meck, we've been doing this for a long time and find a lot of joy out of it. So Cindy.
Sure. Hello, Cindy Bennett. I'm with Vance County Schools. We have currently 7 opportunity culture schools that have been working in this area for a little over 4 years.
So Zach, if you could go ahead and progress on, I think let's see what we have. Yeah, all right. So first thing with Pitt County Schools, we are a district-wide implementation, partly because we are in the 5th year of a federal TIF-5 grant, which allowed us to have $16 million to implement this on top of the state grant as well. So between the two, we are district-wide, and it is a complete human capital management system. With advanced teaching roles, we have 3 main positions that are paid positions. Each gets a stipend. The first is the multi-classroom teacher. It's very similar to the multi-teacher leader that Opportunity Culture has. The main difference with our position is that ours is a teacher of record. So they're assigned to 2 or 3 teachers and they share test score data. So it's a little more of a teacher. It also honestly makes them a little less flexible with working with large groups of teachers as well. So that is one position. That's our highest level. Currently, they get a 30% stipend on top of their salary. So that's a chunk of money there as well during the grant period. The next one is the facilitating teacher. This is a highly effective teacher who leads a community of practice. So think about it as the A team. If you have an instructional problem of practice, who do you need to call in? The A team. Well, the facilitating teacher, in a sense, is like Hannibal. They're the ones who are well trained, who takes the lead, does the reports, and is responsible. But any great team needs great people. So they work very closely with collaborating teachers who are other quality teachers who work with the facilitating teachers all on that instructional need, that problem of practice that we call it as well. We have 2 pipeline programs, which is key. So the idea is you cannot just wave a magic wand and get a teacher leader. So this is, we have a beginning teacher program called KeyBT, as in the keystone of an arch. And then we have the Teacher Leadership Institute, which is a 2-year program, intense training. They end up completing a project, so they have to apply the training they do, and it sets them up for national boards, which we pay for national boards, because part of the idea is if we have to keep them here, we have to increase their salary, and Pitt County Schools can't pay their salary for 20 more years, but the state of North Carolina can if we get them national boards. So how do we offset that increased cost to do that? And that's what the TLI program is designed to do as well. And then really the focus is on high quality training, like super high quality training, that then we are trained to do it. So we do not have to get consultants to do our training anymore, because our folks are trained to do that. And then also district coaching was key for us as well. So that's Pitt. And next slide. All right, there we go. Well, I'll keep rolling. So core beliefs. Really the idea here is for us is we designed this with a couple of things in mind. One, that leading students is different than leading adults. You cannot just take a classroom teacher and expect them to be comfortable leading adults. We found this out our first year with the Teacher Leadership Institute. We had 3 Pitt County Teachers of the Year. We had 1 Regional Teacher of the Year. We had 1 Regional Runner-Up. And about 4 months into the program, they said, Seth, Tom, when it comes to leading adults, we're scared. Who are we to tell another adult what to do? Because they did not understand the difference between positional power and other types of influence. So that needs to happen. The other thing we realize is that teacher leaders are highly effective classroom teachers. The other end of that is just because you're blue does not make you a teacher leader. Leadership is learned is the other thing that we believe in. So the idea is making sure that we can teach the skills and then looking at what competencies and what things do teachers need in order to do that. The idea that the best predictor of future success is prior experience. So give them opportunities in the pipeline to actually show what they do as well. So that's the key thing for us with the pipeline program and also through the interview process. And then really the pipeline programs really are key to allowing new advanced teaching role teachers to be better prepared on the first day. The first year we did this, we got our grant. We started training some folks who are really highly qualified. They did not have the training, and it took us until March of the first year of our federal grant to get everybody trained. So basically a whole year was spent training folks. So the idea is then let's move to be proactive and get that done ahead of time was one of the keys for the last several years we've been able to do. And next slide. There we go.
So when we think about Vance, and I have a link here for our Opportunity Culture website, so you can see actually all of our job descriptions, our process for employment, and there's some other things here. But one of the things that we have talked about and really thought about is when we're searching for folks for these key positions, and we have the multi-classroom leader, we have the expanded impact teacher, and we have the reach associate. Those are the 3 positions that we have. So looking more specifically, I will say at the multi-classroom leader or the expanded impact teacher, one of the things that we started with was clearly articulating, or being able to clearly articulate the skills, the knowledge, the disposition of these folks that we thought could best serve in these positions. So we knew that we were looking for folks who had a proven track record as a teacher. And so we have allowed in our application process, of which you can gain the information from the link, multiple ways for them to demonstrate their track record, because we've had great folks come to us from other states, from private or from charter schools. And so having some flexibility, but no matter where they come from or what their level of experience, they have to be able to demonstrate a proven track record as a teacher. They also have to have demonstrated leadership skills. And one of the ways that we do that, working with new leaders and our partnership with Public Impact, I'll tell you, we have worked hand in hand with both of these groups our entire time. We give them opportunities through problems of practice, through a leadership assessment, to really get a feel for their leadership skills, their problem solving and strategic thinking skills, because those are two things that they really have to be competent in. They have to be willing to be a problem solver, willing to make a decision, and that involves and requires that they are very strategic in their thinking. They have to be able to collaborate with adult learners. And we have found that some who can demonstrate leadership skills and have a proven track record of as a teacher really struggle working with adult learners. So there's some very specific things that we try to do to ensure that we can glean some high-level information and competencies from our folks when we begin that process. They have to understand data systems and data analysis. So one of the things that they do for us is provide the data, but also provide an analysis. So they're really demonstrating to us as they prove their track record as an effective teacher, that they understand, they have used and understand and can explain the data systems that would actually explain to us how they could qualify as a highly performing or a high performing teacher. So again, we have three basic positions: the multi-classroom leader, who could serve and coach and support up to 6 teachers. That pay scale goes from a $9,000 to $13,000 pay differential a year. For our expanded impact teacher, they could begin with serving an additional 33% students. In other words, we look at a class size average in a given school. 33% more puts them at that base pay differential. Then we move to 50, and then we move to 66% more, and they could earn an additional pay differential of $9,000 a year. They, again, are a full teacher of record. And then our Reach Associate, which has been in our situations, we have looked at folks who might have been classified as a teacher assistant or a support person who has a minimum of a 2-year degree, but they have shown great knowledge and skills, maybe whether it's working directly with teachers or working with students as well. And their pay differential begins at $1,000 and goes to $2,500. But we have multiple opportunities for folks. But the first thing that we have to do is, can we clearly articulate the knowledge, skills, and dispositions for these particular positions? And then how are we going to determine whether or not we have the right folks selected for these positions? Next slide.
All right. So I just put into the chat a link to the criteria because it's sort of hard to see. It's a 2-page document. This is just the first page. The other thing to do as well, this is really Cindy and I giving you an overview. Part of this, I think, is also we rely on the expertise within this group. So really, when you think about the 4 districts who have really started this and are continuing it right now, not only Cindy with Vance, but Tom Feller is with me from Pitt. We've got Erin Swanson with Edgecombe. I'm not sure if she's in here or not, but definitely got Amy and Bechet with Charlotte Meck, who have been around for a while and really rely on each other. So I think the idea here is ask questions as we go through this, and we'll do our best to respond as we go through as well. So what you see on the screen is what we actually ended up with in Pitt County to our qualification criteria. We ended up actually having to do this because we first decided when we were designing it, we were first thinking when we are trying to identify these folks, let's use things that teachers already recognize and are okay with getting paid for. So if you see in there, national boards is worth 2 points, which is the higher of the two options. The master's is worth it. And then we had our own internal certification program, the Teacher Leadership Institute. So those were originally the only 3 criteria. You had to have 1 or 2 of those in order to qualify. We quickly realized by listening to parents or listening to principals and teachers, all right, so how about some other areas of expertise? So working with them for literally a year before the grants started, and then even a little bit afterwards, we have really settled on really 5 areas of expertise. One is that student achievement has to be key because you have to, and I said this earlier in one of our core beliefs, they have to have credibility. So they have to have at least positive green results, if not blue. And most of our folks are positive 1. So in other words, they're better than just 1 year of average. And test scores alone do not make you a teacher leader. So not only do you have to have a point from the student achievement criteria, but also some other point in here to make sure that you qualify. Part of that is through the federal grant we have, but this is a way really to tap into some other areas of expertise that we have as well. Through the federal grant, they also said use the evaluation. So we added, as you see, the distinguished on different standards based on what it aligns to. The trick is you cannot be distinguished in standard 1, 3, and 4 as an example and get 3 points. But if you are distinguished in one of those, then you get 1 point. So it was sort of a give and take to make sure that we had a high expectation of criteria and also that we stuck to the standard that we had. So that way teachers knew ahead of time, what do I need to aim for? So if I want this position, I know what training to go to and what to make sure I get. So that was key for us. And next slide. So our first year, we're a little more decentralized than some districts. Our first year implementing, we were hoping to hire 72 facilitating teachers. Our largest year, we hired 97 facilitating teachers. And just for us, because of the size of our district folks, we decided we did not have time or want to hold up the screening process. Part of that might have been a planning thing if we would have started this earlier maybe. But the idea is what we did is instead was use the criteria to qualify folks, and then we verified. So that was a key thing. It made it easier for the most part because people knew what they needed to do before they applied. And also we had to have some crucial conversations about folks about what they needed to do in order to qualify in future years. The other thing that we did is basically treated it like regular human resources processes. So we did not want to recreate the wheel for this. So basically it's interview at least 3 candidates, follow the normal processes, actually not only for the hiring process, but for the improvement process as well. We did not create new processes. We just followed what we already had for advanced teaching roles as well. So that idea helped us, I think, go through as well. Recommendations, definitely making sure that principals had a teacher representative with them, specifically with the multi-classroom and co-teacher part. If 2 teachers share a classroom together on a regular basis and share test scores, that at the end of the year, our multi-classroom teachers were really emphatic of, if I have more say and know that I choose to work with that person, it works, sort of like in a marriage. Arranged marriages work sometimes, but most of the time not. If I have some say in it, that helps. The same for a facilitating teacher and collaborating teacher. When they choose to be a part of the team, it works a whole lot better than when a principal says you shall be on this team. We dealt with a lot of that the first year especially, in making sure that we had the right people on the right team. And let's see what the next slide is. Yeah, so this one, and I think you'll get these slides, but the idea here is the training and support for us is one that we're trying to be proactive of looking at what skills do folks need in order to lead, and then what training are we able to provide for them. So we have our Teacher Leadership Institute is the pipeline program, and a lot of the training that is in the rest of it is embedded in this program. So when someone completes the program, they pretty much are well qualified, if not completely qualified, for the advanced teaching role programs. Adaptive Schools is a program we use really for group collaboration. It's key to what we do, and it aligns very directly to data-driven dialogue, which is how we implement the inquiry cycle. And the neat thing there is that training between adaptive schools and data-driven dialogue in the schools that really have widespread use, it has really infiltrated every professional learning community we have. So that's been key. We also recognize there's expertise in national boards in the master's area, and just recognizing those folks worked hard. They have an area of expertise in that area. That was one of the things we utilized, as well as criteria and preparing folks as they get ready for these positions. On the other side, cognitive coaching, we really use for our multi-classroom teachers. Edgecombe County is actually partnering with us now so we can train larger amounts of teachers, because that's really a key program for us for that particular role. Situational leadership really helps not only with the advanced teaching roles, but also our administration. So we align, for example, if you have someone who is brand new and scared, you lead them differently than you have someone who comes in, they're brand new and they think they can save the world. You have those beginning teachers, right? And then that's very different than an experienced teacher who you can delegate to, and you do not need to micromanage. So the idea is creating that common language has helped us tremendously. From Charlotte Meck, they told us about crucial conversations and all the Vital Smart programs, and we've got folks trained in all of those programs, but crucial conversations is really key for high stakes conversations, mainly because that first group told us we're scared to have conversations with other peers. Who are we? I'm not a principal. So the idea is, how do you have that conversation in a safer way? And then district coaches are really critical. So this is not one-time training. Every month, oftentimes every week, or sometimes multiple times a week, we have 3 district coaches for all of our positions. And that is vitally, vitally important for the training that we provide our folks. Getting them prepared and then keeping them prepared as we go along. And next slide.
And I would say here in Vance, we use a lot of the similar professional development. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have a strong partnership with new leaders. They're providing and continue to provide training for our multi-classroom leaders, for our principals who are leading in our opportunity culture schools, and Public Impact continues to do the same. We also have done a lot of work with the Friday Institute, with teaching and coaching and learning in a virtual environment. So those things have been very beneficial to us throughout the last year, I'll say. Monthly pulse checks with the multi-classroom leaders, monthly problem of practice sessions with our principals about current issues, concerns, or situations within our schools. Those things, along with our work with the Modern Teacher platform and supports, have been very helpful. I will tell you, Vance is one of the schools who has been fully remote since last March. Thankfully, last night, our board did agree to begin bringing students back March 1st. But it's been a very, very difficult year for our schools and for this community. But when we started looking very quickly in March at how we would roll out a strong instructional program remotely, the first folks that we went to help us with the design, of course, was our MCLs. We knew they had the skills, the knowledge, they understood the teachers in the buildings where they were working and the schools, and they had the respect of this community. So I'll tell you, that was very helpful to us as well. We actually, with our application process, and again, via the link, you can see the specifics of it. We do require 3 years of data because we want them to know who they are, know their results, be able to explain their results and any particular trends that they might see, either positive or negative. It's always very interesting to listen when they're explaining their data analysis, because you oftentimes learn a lot about their leadership and their belief system through the explanation of their data. So that's been very eye-opening for us as well. There is, as I mentioned, a leadership potential assessment that New Leaders works with us on. We get results from that and profiles. That really is the beginning of our district screener. So folks apply. It's an open application throughout the year. And as positions come up, then we go into the pool of those who have applied. If they make it through the district screen, meaning that they have the minimum requirements expected in the application process, that their leadership potential score is at a level we feel comfortable with moving forward, then we pull together any principal of an opportunity culture school in the district who has vacancies, along with myself and our executive director of HR, and we begin the district interview process. So that is open to all of the principals who might have any vacancies if they're serving or leading an opportunity culture school. We use the behavior event interview process, which we have found to be extremely helpful and beneficial. And we've had great success in identifying key folks there. And then once we finish the behavior event interview process as a district team, we discuss if this person then is eligible to move forward. Then any principal who has an interest in a school-based interview with that person moves forward using members from their school leadership team, other teachers in the building, and they have a school-based interview. So folks, when they apply, do not apply for a particular school. They are applying for a position. So that's a little different than some districts have used. Other districts have a very large pool. They have a lot of vacancies. Right now, we have about 22 people in our opportunity culture districts in our school, much fewer than some of the other districts. So if I have interviewed and I have made it through the district protocols, and I have 3 principals who want to invite me to a school-based interview, then I would do so. So what happens if then I am offered a position in 2 or 3 schools? At that point, it is up to me to make the decision as to which school I think best, that I could work with best, where I see the greatest match or I have the greatest interest. It is a 3-year contract. So we very clearly upfront designed that contract that after 3 years, if they may have the opportunity to continue as a teacher in the district, but they would have to be the principal at the school where they're working would have to request that they continue in that contract. We look at their data because if I am an MCL and I'm coaching 6 teachers, the data of those 6 teachers also belongs to me. So I still have to continue to have a proven track record of success. So at that point in time, the principal then could make the request to extend the contract for that particular person. Then it's a year-by-year contract that we move forward into. We've only had one person who, after a couple of years, the candidate themselves or the employee themselves decided this wasn't the right thing for them. Brilliant educator, extremely successful in the classroom, struggled with coaching adults. So again, those are key things that we have to be very mindful of. But our process seems to work so far. We've been very, as I said, very successful. Application, first district screen, making sure we have all of the information and minimal requirements. District interview, including the behavior, that is using the behavior event process. And then any principal who wishes to have a further interview with that person invites them to a school-based interview. And then they let us know at the district team, myself and HR, I'm interested in this candidate. And then again, we move forward with the negotiations if they have multiple schools who are interested in them or not. And from that point in time, we move forward with working with the schools and their leadership team to determine the pay differential based on the number of teachers that they'll be supporting. We do not allow first-year MCLs to be a level 3, which is our highest paid with the largest number of teachers. We're very mindful and careful that we just don't place them in a school with 6 teachers, maybe in multiple grades and multiple content areas. So we have to be very careful as we work with our schools to design not only the positions, but the staff support that these folks will offer. Next slide.
So these are our lessons learned. And Amanda, I'll get the, or if Tom is around, we can get the information to the TLI website, the Teacher Leadership Institute. I think that goes to the last bullet there, is that the phase-in program is key, the pipeline programs. In talking early on, even before we got any grant, we were talking to Charlotte Meck, and I think it was Melissa we were talking to, and the pipeline program was key because, again, I said this, you can't just wave a magic wand. So you have to have that pipeline program. The other thing for us is by starting our 2 pipeline programs before we had any money, it made it, I think in my mind, a much stronger grant when we applied for a grant, because we already had things, we showed investment, we put our money where our mouth was, the district leadership was invested. So I think that's a key thing. And we'll be definitely willing to talk with you about what we did there. I think the other thing back to the top is decide how to measure impact early, because the second bullet is there. These positions have a positive impact, and you have to determine really what are you looking for, because if you have a instructional problem of practice, like in science, and you do not have a science and a grade test in that grade level, it's hard to measure that impact. There are other ways to do it. So that's where qualitative data comes in. And for us, we spent $380,000 on an external evaluator. They are a thought partner. It has been central to all we do. And that's probably 2 to 3 times what Tripp Stallings and the Friday Institute folks got for the entire state and the 6 counties. So invest in that early, plan on that, I think. The ongoing continuous support is vital. Having a coach there is critical. The more widespread use you have, the better. So once schools do things across the board, it's critical. Plan, where does your MCT go? Where did your facilitating teacher go? So you impact multiple grade levels. That's critical. So you're not just one dancing idiot in a building, right? You know the problem there. You feel lonely. When you have other compadres there with you, it really works tremendously, tremendously well. And principles are key. And I know that's one thing we've been talking with EdCom, especially about the school transformation process. And Cindy, you might mention that, but the principles are key. And then teachers are key early on, so they have buy-in. And final slide. You're muted.
Thank you. Just a couple more things. And again, I echo what Seth has said as well, but clarity around roles and responsibilities is very important. And that does in fact include the principal in that building, because we really work and operate under the mantra that everyone can be coached up. So it takes a while to help folks understand that, because just like in the scenarios that we were working with earlier, oftentimes people might think that if I have a coach, I'm deficient. So we try to, everyone needs coaching up or deserves coaching up. So it's about increasing the knowledge and skills of all staff. So that really changes the culture of a building. But those roles have to be clarified, and those responsibilities have to be clarified early. And the principals are key. They have to understand and invite and welcome the knowledge and expertise of their multi-classroom leader. They have to welcome them around their leadership table to have those ongoing conversations. Because if not, there becomes the great divide of going around the MCL to the teacher if they've been encouraged to do something by an MCL. So clarifying roles and responsibilities, clear communication to all staff to ensure buy-in and develop that healthy school culture. I cannot say that enough. One of the things that new leaders and public impact, both groups have said to us, we heard in Charlotte Meck, we've heard from many others, clear communication, early communication. It includes the communication to the families about the new folks that you're going to have in your building, or the folks with new roles in your building. And so we've tried to use our multi-classroom leaders as not only just members of the school leadership team who meet regularly with that administrator, but also in other ways with our virtual sessions for parent engagement. And so people are beginning to see that these folks are there to support everyone in the building, including the family. So that in itself will either slow the process, stop the process, or just keep the momentum. So I cannot say enough about communicating what the program is going to look like in your school, what the goals and expectations are, and the roles and responsibilities of these folks. And again, if you don't have a strong school-based leadership team, you're going to struggle. Every good principal cannot necessarily lead a good opportunity culture school. We found early on as well, when we opened this up to our schools in a volunteer manner, that every principal wasn't interested in this, because it was more, wait a minute, too many people giving me too many suggestions and pieces of information and advice. And others were like, please, the more eyes in the building, the more support, the better off we are. And some really struggle the first couple of years with letting go of some things and having other people support them in gathering the information and working with teachers. But again, it's a mindset shift for the leaders in the building as well. And then that strong financial model that can be sustained. I learned a long time ago in education, never give someone something that you might have to take back. So be very mindful before you push out these great incentives or these pay differentials that you have some method of sustaining or sustainability. We received the grant early on, but we knew that was time limited. So we very quickly started looking at other opportunities, financial models to sustain our grant. What we have been able to do thus far, when our grant ended, was to look at the trade-off of staffing positions in our schools, and then every school would be, I'll say, personally responsible for the pay differential only. And they were able to look at ways that they could do that with other grants or federal funding that they received. So as a district, we really have committed to district set-asides to support them in those pay differentials, but they have to be willing to have some buy-in. So we'd love to continue the conversation. If you have questions, we'll make sure you have in our emails, you have other links, but thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. This was fantastic. Thank you, Seth. I so appreciate your time. We are right at noon, and I want to thank everyone for attending and participating. These conversations are, heartwarming and important. And all of your point about capacity building, there's a reason the word culture comes up all the time. This is a massive cultural shift. And for those who are willing to lean in and do this, this is brave work. And it's important work. And I'm so grateful to each of you who keep the students at the center of that brave work, that you're so willing and capable to see that empowering, distributing that leadership within the school ultimately is for the benefit of the students, and what is good for students is good for the educators and principals. So it's a beautiful, virtuous cycle. Anyway, thank you so much. I know Seth and Cindy, your doors are always open, and we're grateful to you for being that way. Anybody who has questions, please do. And we will be sending out information to the broader team as well. Thanks for making the time. Go forth and lead, and we will talk to you all. We'll see you again soon. Thank you again, everyone.